Avani Gilbert. So, it's so funny because after so many years, I feel like I really need to someday write this out and get like a nutshell variation. Because there's no it wasn't like it wasn't like, oh, I'm moving to Costa Rica today. I traveled here when I was in university, fell in love with this place. I had traveled a bit around before, and this was the only place that I really immediately was like, I have to go back there. Like I cried when I left, and I had been traveling before, and that was not an experience I had had. So I continued to come back for 4 years. I finished with university and I was teaching in a public high school. And one of the bonuses of being in public education is you have a lot of vacation. So I would literally come down for 5 days at a time if that was all that I had, and I always came back here. After 4 or so years of that, I transitioned here full time. And I had been kind of moving stuff slowly over years, and then I moved full time, and have not turned back since. So that was 14 years ago, and I'm still here, and I'm even much more deeply rooted here now. I just love this place, and I see that impact on a lot of people. This place really has something very deeply special, and it calls to a lot of people. I cannot tell you how many people I've met through the years that are, they're like, I was supposed to be here for 5 days, and then I canceled the whole rest of my trip to only stay here, which is exactly what I did on my first time here. And, my 3-month trip turned into a 6-month trip, or my 3-month trip turned into like, I'm still here 5 years later. And I honestly hear this story all the time. There's really something special about this place, which I have a lot of ideas about what I think is special here, but I think it's unique to everyone that comes too. The biggest thing with not only Costa Rica, but within Costa Rica, specifically this place in the South Caribbean, in Talamanca, in my home, is that after traveling around through my college years and post-grad, this really was the only place that I left every time, always kind of feeling like I had unfinished business there. Every other place I went to, it was sort of like, wow, that was really cool. What an enriching experience. And I would sort of like check it off the list, that's done. I don't need to go back. This place, it never felt like it was done. And I honestly just kept coming back and forth. When I was teaching high schoolers in rural Maine, teaching them Spanish, which was, also really sweet because I always felt like this connection to this place, even when I was back in Maine. I would just come as much as I could. And over the course of 4 years, I slowly started moving my things and then transitioned here full time. So I guess from my first trip to living here full time was somewhere like 4 or 5 years. I still love traveling. I still love learning in that way by getting to other places, by interacting with other cultures. And I still am always just so grateful to come back to this place and have this as my home. Because even after 14 years, there's still things to discover here. It's just such an amazing place. I'm still learning about the flora, the fauna, the medicinal herbs, the history of the place. I just love it. I feel like I'm gushing, like I'm talking about a crush, but that's really how I feel. I was, for many years, dating a man here that grew up in Limon, and then we were married for many years. So we didn't exactly come here together. He was already based out of here. So that was definitely part of my coming here quicker. I was kind of on like a 5-year plan. As I was teaching, I'm like, okay, this is great. I can get I was fresh out of college. I moved here really pretty young. And I did have the logical brain plan to really get things in order and, set up my life and deal with the finances and, student loans and all of that. But then, when young love comes in, I think a lot of logic goes out the window. So I fast-tracked it and I moved here a lot quicker than I probably would have, which I don't regret any part of that at all. Like, it just has meant more time here. And I'm so blessed and grateful for that. For a long time, like years after I moved, I had one auntie in particular, and she even after like 5 years, she'd say, so, when are you guys going to move back home? And she would still refer to, the place that I grew up as if that's my proper home. And it just was, she couldn't wrap her mind around the fact that I did have a home and it wasn't where she was talking about anymore. I wasn't on a 5-year vacation. I was really like established in my new community. That was always really funny. Or, I'd get comments from my family when I go to visit, like, oh, you're home, you're on vacation from your vacation. And for a while it was kind of like, almost like a little bit of a joke. It's not the most simple concept for a lot of folks from the United States, I think, to consider that someone born and raised in the United States would actually want to immigrate and live somewhere else. And I think that it was confusing for them. I mean, now after so long, so much of my family has come down, and some of my family has come down and visited like a lot. And I think the more they come to this place, the clearer it becomes for them why I have chosen this as my home. And it wasn't like such a drastic or dramatic change for me. I grew up in a farm in a really small town on like a big old family farm. So it's not like I came from like a really accustomed to like urban setting, and then all of a sudden I was in the middle of the jungle, So I was really accustomed to being out and in nature and all of that, and at peace with the bugs and the snakes and all that jazz. But I think the whole concept of moving away from this country where a lot of folks there believe that, you really have everything that you need, and why would anyone want to leave this place? And even in dealing with immigration through residency and citizenship processes, I noticed that it was confusing for a lot of people. And so I realized it's definitely the path less traveled, but I truly can't imagine my life any other way. When I go and visit my family now, and I love them so dearly, and I sometimes feel a little bit like a true foreigner going into that setting, because I've been gone from that for so long. But now, they really celebrate me, and they're really happy. They're really happy for my life here. My son, who was born and has been born and raised here, they wish they had more time with him, for sure, especially Grandma and Grandpa. But they're super happy for me. It took them a long time to wrap their brains around it, but yeah, they love having this place to come visit, that's for sure. I make a conscious effort to do work to like not speak in absolutes, never, always. So it's difficult for me to say, I would never go back. But I can say, with my spiritual practices, with my meditation and all of this, it's very difficult for me to visualize myself anywhere other than here. There's challenges, like integrating into another country, language, culture, etc. that you were not born and raised in it's not easy. It's for sure not for the faint of heart. So much respect for all the people who have done this before me, and so there's times where it's hard, and I've had times where I've thought, well, I don't have to do this. And that is a huge privilege that I have, especially with a U.S. passport, that I can choose something else, but I really just can't see that for myself. At the end of the day, with all of the challenges of living in a place that I am not from originally, and that's very different in the sense that I went from a developed nation into a developing nation, that comes with challenges, and those are challenges I'm willing to take on, as opposed to different things that I might be engaged in if I were living in the United States. I'm just learning to find my voice through the art of singing. I'm taking harmonium lessons and Indian devotional song lessons, and so I'm kind of like opening my creativity in that way. I'll definitely also never be like a recording music artist or anything like that. But I also think that just for the people that I think of in my life that have kind of chosen this non-traditional way of living, I mean, even just that alone, it's very outside of the box, and I feel like that in itself is creative. I mean, every single day is a practice in problem solving. I love working with the language. And even though it's challenging, I really love the feeling of like, okay, there was this puzzle presented as part of being an outsider or a newbie here, and I figured it out and I overcame it, and now that's done, you know. And I love that creative process. I love being stimulated in that way. As well, through the practices and the studies of yoga and Ayurveda, it's a very creative path to choose. It's not always easy. It requires a lot of really deep self-study, which can be hard. It can be challenging. It can be dark. It can be like unsavory. You know, we can find a lot of stuff about ourselves we don't like, and be like, I don't want to do that self-study anymore. And then in the teacher's seat, where you're like working to pass on and encourage these things in creative ways that will land, that are really sometimes deep and heavy concepts. You know, we're talking about philosophy, psychology, mythology, and it's tough stuff. And I love that aspect of teaching too, of getting creative and like, how can I take this message, you know, yoga as actually the study of death and our relationship to death. How can I take that message that sounds like, whoa, so intense, and make it accessible and give it to people in a way that they can develop curiosity about it and be willing to explore that, versus just being like, that's too deep or that's too intense and I'm out. I think anyone that teaches, regardless of the modality, teachers are like the most creative, really. Okay, I think back of the teachers that I love that really impacted me. Yeah, you always have to come up with ways to pass the information on in a way that's accessible, and that is fun. I love that. I know that's one of my strong points. In the Ayurvedic philosophy, I'm Vata is my type, my dosha, and Vatas are really great at generating ideas, and what they might have challenges with sometimes is like the focusing and the like execution of the idea. But the idea making and brewing, I love that. I absolutely love that. And I think that's why entrepreneurship fits me well too, because I love having something that I can really develop and create exactly as I dream up and envision. It's very special. I think the biggest thing with the wellness journey that I always work hard to impress upon people, and particularly students that I have come in, that are sometimes really young or sometimes really fresh, or the whole thing is very new, is really just that it is a journey. And if we ever think that we will land at or arrive at a destination, at a perfect destination in wellness, then we have additional layers of ego or whatever it may be to burn through. You know, and I've been there for sure before, where it's like, you know, okay, I feel like I'm getting things figured out, and then the next lesson comes. So I think that would be the biggest thing, that, you know, I love working in this field. I love sharing my passion for these studies. And it's something that it never ends, it never stops. I will never get to a point in this life, or maybe many lives, where, you know, I have all the wisdom. It's like it's a never-ending journey and path. And I think that's also part of the creative aspect that I love. You know, you can never get bored working in wellness. And if you do, it's like, I guess it's no one's fault but your own. You need to go find the next thing to study and explore, or take some retreat in time for self-study. So that's the biggest thing. I mean, I was turned on to this quite young, like as a teenager, really because I was in competitive sports, and I loved it for the community aspect. I loved the connection with the other athletes, the relationships with the mentors and coaches, all of that. The expectations as far as academics in order to be part of it, and I loved that whole part. But I never felt that super competitive edge, you know, and I saw some of my teammates really taking off and starting to talk about, you know, playing at university level and et cetera, et cetera. And I never felt that, that drive. Like for me, it was always about my personal best, or what was my evaluation of how I performed that day on the field, or whatever it may be. And so I think like even before I studied this stuff, I was already like a little bit of yogic mindset, but I hadn't heard that word. I didn't know what that was. So I'm very thankful for that I had the ability to observe that in myself. And so actually already as a teenager, I kind of started hiding in my room and exploring yoga, on VHS tape, and, these old black and white books with, people wearing ridiculous full-length leotards and these really funny things that I went to for my sources. And I'm super thankful for that, because wellness it's not a practice and it's not a destination. It's a lifestyle, and every single day when I wake up, it's a choice that I have to make. And sometimes I fall off the wagon and like just go for it with the, cheesy pizza or whatever it may be. And then the next day I'm like, thank goodness I can make better choices today. So yeah, I guess that's what I want to share. I mean, it's not a destination, it's a journey. You have to choose it. You have to be willing to lean into it every single day. In today's world, health, like whole health and wellness, like all layers, the way that yoga approaches it, the way that Ayurveda approaches it, where we're more than just our body, that type of health and wholeness, that is the greatest wealth that anyone can have. It impacts our relationships, our longevity, our experience of being alive. I mean, when we feel truly healthy and whole, we are vibrant and we are happy to be alive, and we're happy to relate with those around us, and it's smooth and it's fluid and it's very beautiful. This life is full of very tough stuff. It's just a fact of being a human on this planet at this time. We can do the hard stuff if we have our health with us. And yeah, so go for it. It's my ultimate wish for everybody to have access to health and wellness. I always say, like, for sure, part of my karmic debt is learning something about patience. And that's why I landed here, because everything here is very slow and everything is pura vida. Someone showed up an hour late, pura vida. Or they didn't show up at all, pura vida. The bank line was 3 hours long, pura vida. It's very, it can be tough. Part of this could be youth, or for sure part of it is youth, but also it was what was just so culturally ingrained into me. I saw patterns already immediately after, directly out of university, when I went into the public education setting, and I was so accomplishment-based. I mean, I was volunteering for every sports team. I was volunteering for every student club. I was doing, Seva outside volunteer work, helping with fundraisers. I was chaperoning dances. I was creating new curriculum to teach the teenagers about traveling and volunteer work, and I was teaching all my curriculum. And, I would find myself getting really upset with the other, whoever that was in that moment. I couldn't believe that they would ask me to do that, or this is way too much, and I'm way too young to be this stressed out. And then I realized, probably because I had the good fortune of kind of stumbling onto yoga quite young, that I was like, oh, this is actually my pattern. It's not the pattern of everyone else around me. It's my pattern. I'm saying yes to everything. What am I looking for? Why am I doing that? Am I seeking recognition? Is it some kind of a thing within myself? And, it's taken me a long time of being out of that setting to actually be so much of that was cultural training, actually. How would I expect myself to already have kind of processed or overcome that pattern when I had been having it developed into me for, at that point in time, 22, 23, 24 years. And it really took me living in a different way for a long time. It wasn't like I moved here and then I had this aha moment. I mean, I'm still unraveling it. I still see patterns of my work as an entrepreneur where I'm like, that's a really outdated, like that's a US mentality. Things don't need to be done yesterday. It's even hard for me to say this out loud, but like, it's okay for things to happen slowly. Being in this environment, it's like that just gets ripped out of you so quickly. The electricity will go out. You won't have internet. You won't have phone service. A bridge will go out and literally your community will be cut off from the whole rest of the country. I mean, these things happen, or it will rain nonstop for a month straight and there will no longer be a road for you to access the supermarket. It's like this is part of real life here. And so it really asks you to reevaluate your priorities. I can say that in my whole time growing up in the United States, it was never ingrained into me that health was a form of wealth. Never. I never heard that. I never thought that. I never thought, wow, this level of stress that I'm experiencing is very detrimental to my health. I never had a coach or mentor saying, what can you do to take care of yourself first so that you can go out into the world then and be your best self? Never. I never had those conversations. And then you come here and it's like, your friend is like, no, I'm not going to do that today because I can tell what my body really just needs is to set up my hammock on the beach all day on a Tuesday. And it's fine. It's totally fine. The world is still spinning. It's been a huge retraining and a refocus. Also here, I would say, in my experience here, the number one go-to as far as like if you need a remedy of some sort or some kind of a health thing is kind of bubbling up, going to the pharmacy or going to the doctor is not the first go-to. Getting the injection or whatever it may be. It's always like, oh, let's go harvest some like kukumeka root for some tea, for some iron for your blood, or you need some more people water, and that is just, it's the norm. That is what's normal here. I was raised in a household that was pretty focused on natural health and medicine for my mother and the essential oils and all that stuff, but that was deemed kind of odd or weird or like a little, strange or funky. Here it's just, that's the way that it is. It's like, why would you take a pill when you can just drink some people water? And I love that. Also, access and contact with nature is vital. Fresh air. I mean, all of this stuff, I guess, kind of goes without saying. I mean, we're sitting in a building, yes, but we're surrounded by these beautiful, life-giving mountains of Talamanca, all the fresh air, and especially after this morning's rain, it's just like extra clean and yummy. And the wildlife, and we harvest our salad stuff directly out of the grounds on site. So things like knowing your food source, it's all just part of life here. That's why this is such an amazing space globally for people to come study yoga. Because yoga is really, this study of our internal nature and workings and, the external nature and what's around us. And so this is why a place like Costa Rica or Bali, they've become so popular for this study because people actually need, we're starved for this. We want to be with the trees. I know it sounds very hippy-dippy, but that's what we want. We want to breathe the ocean air. We want to know where our food comes from. I'm so grateful for this place. This is a huge contribution to my health. So AmaSer originally was opened 14 years ago as a teeny tiny little, I actually came with the intention of focusing on my body. My first kind of entry as far as the profession goes into wellness was actually as a licensed massage therapist. So that was my first kind of formal training I did to share wellness with other folks. It's a combination of two Spanish words, ama from amar, which is to love, and ser, which is to be, or also used as like being, like as in like a human being. So it's kind of like love being, as in like a being of love, or love the state of being. So I really thought I was going to open up like a massage and Reiki space. Well, I did open that up. And then I had done my yoga teaching, my first yoga teaching certification then too. So I was like, in addition, I think I'll offer a couple classes a week. because there wasn't a lot for like, scheduled kind of formal yoga spaces happening here at this time 14 years ago. So sometimes hotels would offer it a little bit here and there. And I was like, I really kind of want a steady place that I can practice yoga. So selfishly, I was like, I'll offer some classes. Probably someone else will come forward as a teacher. We can build them into the schedule. And then I can get some yoga. I really had no idea that was going to be, things just kind of develop as they need to. And I really had no idea that was going to be what the people both coming here and those already rooted in the community were looking for. I really envisioned myself before I moved mostly working in massage therapy, which now I actually, since like 3 or 4 years ago, I am pretty much not practicing at all anymore. So the yoga completely took over, which was incredible and such a blessing, and also unexpected and kind of unplanned. And then I always just kind of started continued training, and people started asking about training to teach, if I could train them to teach yoga. So then that was kind of a whole new way that it evolved. So my original intention of opening is very different than kind of what's evolved out of that. I think I wasn't even able to think of the enormity of the project that is actually still evolving. And in part of our rebranding, we're really looking for new ways to include more parts of the community. So part of our new project is really getting some kids installations here. We have a small play area, but we're hoping to put in playground and like a children's garden and all of this, so that also parents can come, even if they're unable to come to a yoga class or book a bodywork service, or for tourists that aren't staying in the lodges, they can come up and enjoy lunch, and their kids can have a safe place to play where they can learn about the food that's growing all around us. They can have educational, healthy play, books and toys and spaces. And so it's kind of always evolving. So yeah, I originally kind of created it very small, like microcosm. I'm going to go down and like see if I can figure out how to survive in the jungle. And if I do like a couple massages a week and 1 or 2 yoga classes, I think that'll work. And I can like live this much more kind of slow and relaxed lifestyle based more on what's really like feeding me and inspiring me versus, this really high stress accomplishment based thing that was happening before. And then it just kind of grew. And so it's developed a lot more now into a service of sharing super sacred and just powerful information and wisdom out of India, the yoga and the Ayurveda, applying it in a way that is relevant locally, which that's what I love about those practices too, because Ayurveda is always going to talk about like what are the resources that you have in your geographic area. I think now it's turned much more into an education platform. We also like to uplift and work with a whole bunch of really amazing ongoing service projects, like nonprofit groups here. It's hard for me to nail down. It's like this is a business, and it's also like a project in community and in service and in education. Like it's an educational center as well. That's not a very precise answer. But it is what it is. First principal things for me when coming here was dedication to learn the language. I do see this a lot. I'm very fortunate because I had some formal study and then I was teaching, and the Spanish that happens here, I love it. It's such a beautiful blend between, traditional Spanish and the English influence, because there's like 60-something countries represented in this teeny tiny town. And then the patois of the Afro-Caribbean community. And so the Spanish here is so unique and special. So I think that for sure, like especially as a recommendation for people interested in going to any area, away from where you currently are. I think that is such a potent way to show respect for the place that you're going into. And I think it's really vital. So that's one way. Also, of course, getting involved with the nonprofit projects that are going here. So typically we have one or two, kind of depends on the project, per year. And we are generally raising funds for them through karma yoga, through service yoga projects. And we try to choose stuff that's like truly, truly local. So what I mean by that is not even like a national, Costa Rican national organization, but we really try to choose stuff that's South Caribbean based. So we've worked with, for example, a small women's clinic here that was looking for help and support through supply, simple things like pregnancy tests and condoms and, very basic supplies that just they could use the financial support in. Sloth conservation group here that's doing incredible work. I'm trying to think. A children's drumming music lessons that we're starting to raise funds to go on some trips to do concerts and show their talents. The kids here are like so talented and amazing. So we try to kind of diversify and give back in different ways. The Puerto Viejo Dogs group is another one. They always need help. So if anyone's watching this and interested in how they can give back to the community, some of those organizations just always need help, or maybe you can put my contact and I can send links. Also, in particular, something I do in my trainings, because the yoga teacher trainings bring so many people here from elsewhere. We always have a couple local people in the training, but the majority of the students are coming in from outside. We really try to bring in education and history about the local area. I think it's a responsible and ethical form of tourism, and I think in some way the folks that choose to take this program here are already in that mindset based on what we put out there to the world. I don't think they would choose this program if they weren't like kind of ready for that. Whether it's like the garden tours, again, to get them accustomed to the flora and fauna. We make sure to take them on a couple trips in the local area so they can really experience the land. We also have this amazing woman, teacher, leader, woman of many hats. Her name is Rosa, from the Jejiwa clan of the Bribri people, and she comes and shares, and it's for a lot of people it's like the most memorable thing of the training. And she comes and shares cacao, and she talks about the history of cacao, the way that the Bribri folks, particularly the women in particular, process the cacao, work with the cacao. And we share it in ceremony. And she also shares a very special dance with us called the dance of the sorbong. I'm very bad at it. I'm not very good at dancing. But it's a way to introduce the folks that come here to something that's out, it's literally surrounding us. We look around and these mountains, the Bribri people in particular, they're mountain people. So as we look around, up beyond this property here to the mountains in the back, and as we look out toward the ocean and all these mountains, this is their land. And it can be very easy to overlook that or not see it if you choose that, because when you're just right in town center, in the tourist center, people can feel quite a bit like, I'm kind of in a, it's not so different than where I came from, Things are really set up right in the town center to serve foreigners. Yes, I keep saying foreigner when actually, I'm a citizen of this place. But I think whenever you've immigrated from elsewhere, there is always a little bit of that sentiment of not being really like from there. And so that's always kind of a dynamic that we're very conscious of, and we're always looking for ways to work with it in a way that's graceful and helpful and useful in some way. It's such an incredible place. Like it makes me so sad that so many people come and like wouldn't be interested in the richness of the local culture here, It's just magical. The history is so dynamic and interesting, So this is where I start gushing again, like I'm talking about a crush. The natural environment, for sure, is the top of the list. It's funny because I meet people all the time and, they're like, I just have to see a sloth, or I want to see a sloth or the monkeys or whatever it may be. And they've got this like priority thing on their list. And I do too. And I have two of those. And one is the toucans. I've been here for so long and it's still not a day goes by that if I see a toucan, I'm like, oh, that old thing again. It just, nature is so incredible and it is so in your face and vibrant here. I mean, the biodiversity here, I literally just got goosebumps. I've never seen it anywhere else. Like I said, I am still discovering. I have seen, like in this last year alone, flowers and frogs and snakes that I have never seen in 14 years. 2 days ago, one of our workers brought us this fruit, a new fruit, and I'm like, what is that? He's like, I don't really know what it's called. It's kind of related to this other fruit. And I was like, can you please find out what this is called? I can't believe I've never seen this before. So that is at the very top of my list. I mean, the abundance of food, things are just growing all year, because we do have seasons, but it's, there's always pretty much, 11, 12 hours of sunlight all year. So stuff just grows in abundance. And the fresh air. Also, the richness and diversity of this place in particular. I can never remember exactly how many it is, but I want to say it's like 60 something different countries represented in a town where, if you look at really like full-time residents, this is actually a really small town. It can seem big when it's full, in peak season when there's a lot of tourism, but I think there's like 5,000 people that are actually like full-time residents. I mean, you can walk down the street and on just the stretch of Main Street hear 10 different languages. So I'm constantly learning from that, which I love. So this place is like the best classroom. So it really satiates that, one of the driving forces in my life is like learning. I love learning. I love being in the seat of student. And this place offers it all. The flora, the fauna, the culture, the people from all over the world that come here, the fresh air, the striving to be, energy independent is something that's happening in Costa Rica. The eco focus, there's a lot to be improved on there. I'll just put that out there in this place. But I like that that's in the mentality. The lifestyle, the focus is on family and what brings me joy. And as I wake up today, how can I prioritize quality of living versus accomplishing? Huge cultural and mental shift for me. I see in a lot of people a little bit of a level of fear as far as like relating to the natural world. That didn't really impact me so much because, like I said, I grew up in a really rural setting and on a farm. So for me, that part was pretty fluid. I think the biggest shock for me has been, and continues to be, like it's definitely something that I haven't like totally overcome. It's like something I'm working with as part of my life. Is there is a different reality in a developing country when it comes to like personal safety and security, and especially as a female. I grew up very, very free. I didn't have to think about, not walking or biking or whatever. I guess really all of us do need to think about these things at all times, but it wasn't in my mental space of like, I really shouldn't be bicycling on that road after dark by myself. Or, if I need to call for help from law enforcement or a government agency. Previously, I didn't really have thoughts about like, they might just not show up or they might not do their piece or, that stuff wasn't just on my radar. And, living here, I've seen that the slowness, that I talked about, that's wonderful for cultivating things like patience, and compassion and all of that. And also there is like a downside to that, you know. I have had experiences where I did not feel safe in my body, in my space, in my home. I have had friends have really unsavory experiences here, where there isn't really much of a recourse, where there isn't much of a follow-up, where you know, you can't depend on the paperwork being filed or the punishment being followed through with, or whatever it may be. And I know, you know, and this is part of my life journey too, you know, I know and I'm learning and I'm unpacking that this is many people's reality, even in a developed country. And so I think for me that was like a real wake up that, you know, safety is actually not a guarantee. Like bodily safety is not actually a guarantee. And there is a really different cultural, I don't want to say that it's culturally accepted because that really diminishes, you know, I don't believe that of the Costa Rican people. But there's a different way that like views on, particularly on females, is like it's still there. You know, it's like a little bit. We're still growing out of this. We're still educating ourselves on this. Like recently, a law was passed that people can actually be fined, and there can actually be legal repercussions here for things like catcalling. And I thought, wow, that's like so progressive. I can't believe that happened here, because it like happens all the time, to the extent that it's like can be very uncomfortable. And you know, sometimes a woman just wants to go and get her groceries and go home. Or sometimes she's like wrestling her kid and trying to get him in the car and whatever, and she doesn't want this like unwanted attention. And it's a pretty built-in part of the experience here. So I feel like for safety, like for me, it hasn't really been like the natural world. I know some people get really skeeved by the spiders and the snakes and whatever. For me, it's more about like the infrastructure here and how people are or are not supported. You know, for example, the healthcare system too. And we're seeing it right now where it's just, it's really just not developed to support, you know, like the Costa Rican healthcare system is not developed to support a pandemic. And things like that sometimes start to bubble up some fear in me, some fear and anxiety, and maybe even not so much for myself, but I find myself being fearful for example, my little one's grandmother that's not in the best of health, and the health system in Limon is totally collapsed. And, you know, what if she needs that care and she doesn't have access to it? So that stuff's there, and it's very real. And I think that that's one of those things I was speaking about initially, that at the end of the day, I'm willing to take on that kind of discomfort or those kind of fears or anxieties. It's worth it for me to live with that and work with it, and you know, study myself and study the situation and consider the practices I can take on to feel most safe, to feel most healthy, versus being like, well, I'm just going to leave there because that's too scary for me. It's paradise here, but no paradise is perfect. It can be tricky, you know, when you're in a place for like a week. I hear this a lot. People come down, I'm going to move here, and I'm like, maybe rent a place for like 3 or 6 months before you say that. Like, welcome. You're totally welcome, but like maybe stay a little bit longer, because when you're only on vacation and then the weather's really nice during your week that you're here or whatever, it can feel really amazing. But there are, like, you know, there's challenges. There's challenges to being here. It's totally worth it though. If I could write a letter to my younger self. Being young is hard. I'm always so puzzled by people who are like, what I wouldn't give, you know, to be 16 or whatever. I'm like, I wouldn't want that. That was hard. That stuff's really hard, you know, being young and unsure and working through the whole thing of being in relationship with other people and developing friendships and family dynamics, and that stuff's hard, you know. And as you grow up and you get older and you develop more sovereignty over your own experience, and just build confidence with life experience, I feel like it just gets better with time. Definitely directed to myself, and I also feel like just young people all need this message is, don't worry about what other people think, you know? I remember when I was in my transition of moving here, I almost sometimes felt shame about it because I would hear people say things to me like, oh, you're so lucky, or I could never do that. And it made me feel bad about really going out and following my heart. And then I thought to myself, you know, like, why are other people so uncomfortable with my life decisions? And of course, when you're 22 to 24, you think a lot about it. And the older that I grow, or the wiser that I grow, the more I realize, you know, nobody's thinking about me. No one's thinking about other people. They're all too busy thinking about themselves. That's our human condition. That's the reality of living as a human being. And so when I think back to like how much time I wasted when I was young by saying yes to things I didn't really want to do, you know, when I was talking about when I was teaching, taking on every single project because I didn't want someone to be mad at me. I didn't want someone to think less of me. I didn't want them to think I was less capable. I didn't want them to think I was less committed, you know, whatever it may be. And all the things I did that I really didn't want to do because it was like a fear about this outside source, you know, that would be what I would write to myself. Like, go to the inside well, go to the inside source. Like, what is feeding that? Go back inside. That's where the answers always are. You know, we get so distracted by looking for stuff outside, but like all the answers are inside. As long as I'm feeding my own well and source of joy, not by trampling over others, then I'm in alignment, you know.